Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I'm Bob Bazans. I'm an alcoholic. Sober through the grace of God and the age of the 10th of December, 1967, and for that I'm very grateful. Well, I'm not in Kansas anymore. This is really extraordinary for lots of reasons. I guess there aren't any places in the country where they do it quite like you all do it, and as well as you all do it. It is really, and I hope, Michael, as you look over this group and the beauty of it and the excellence of the experience we've had to date, if you have any negative thought in your head, I would not, you need not engage it. Really is good. So many of the conferences you go to today, the people are not dressed as well at all. It's tacky. No, it is. When I came in, when we had our annual banquet, the intergroup banquet, we all dressed up. Most people wear suits to meetings. We're past that. That is, if we keep doing that, we're going to look like the VFW. But there is something very nice about what I'm looking at today. California, the land of the giants of Alcoholics Anonymous, and a lot of great memories and a lot of great friends. I never thought I'd be standing in a room like this and maybe 50 to 70 people. That's extraordinary for me to think of. And I think today of how many people in California and in LA that have touched my AA life and contributed to whatever the heck I'm going to try to do tonight. It's a lot. And it's extraordinary. We think it's so important. If I went to my group and told them about my heroes in Alcoholics Anonymous, many of whom started here, they don't know who the hell they are. They don't know who they are. And yet those people are part of the fabric of my life and the fabric of my recovery and the fabric of, you're in a meeting and you say something and someone thinks it's really smart. Well, it's not mine. It's yours or, someone else that you took. And we need to keep doing that. I remember when my mentor, Bob White, he was my Chuck Chamberlain, and I had a nice relationship with Chuck, but not as close as with White. Those guys pulled really big wagons. And when they died, most of us, it took 2 or 3 of us to start pulling the wagons that those guys pulled. You still have a few out here in California that are single wagon pullers. Some of them sitting in front of me. But mostly, it is now 2 or 3 of us that are pulling the wagons that those guys did. And whatever the hell the essence of what those men and women had is we've got to keep doing that. And not get lost in the BS. Not get lost in the chant after the Lord's Prayer or the crop circle that we now get in to say the Lord's Prayer. Or all the odd things that the rituals that Dr. Jack was so concerned about because they were part of what the Washingtonians had, and that we keep the essence, the ability to be able to light someone's pilot light. A year or so ago, I was at the South Bay Roundup, and I ended up to get in the room with the old timers meeting. You had to get a ticket, and for 30 or 35 years, I can't remember. And for some reason, I started to cry when that meeting started, and I cried all the way through I didn't even put my name in the hat. They called me, and I couldn't talk. The characters that you have in California, and the subject of the meeting was the oddest experience you had. You take the oddest group of people with the oddest experience, and it really... But you look at those people, You look at the transformation. I mean, it is just extraordinary. It's kind of what Paul was talking about last night. You know, that you walk into a room and those old guys and gals took us by the hand and healed us. Not a small deal. And I hope that years from now, we've got 3 kids that are in the program. And I hope when our kids, their kids, walk in a room, that there's someone can take their hand and do what you all do so well here. You gave a hell of a talk last night. It was extraordinary. A long time ago, someone told me never to follow an Indian or an Alateen. I'm going to add an Irishman to that to that list. And I was thinking, what was so wonderful about the talk? And even Clancy liked it. I mean, it was really. And John talked about the quality of it. Obviously, he's very articulate. Obviously, he's bright. And he's very well spoken. But the newness of it, I mean, it's extraordinary. It was powerful and it was a great talk. But I remember the first time I heard John talk. I mean, he looked like someone Chamberlain picked up at the yacht club. I mean, he did. I mean, I kept hearing about this guy who had a hell of a story. He did not look like he had a hell of a story. But we get so used to each other's stories that we don't hear them anymore. We don't hear the power in them. Now, we do when Paul talked, because it was new for many of us. We hadn't heard the talk. But we get deaf to the guys in our group and the gals in our group and the stories in our group. And they are no less wonderful than that. And I hope we keep the ability to be able to keep hearing the wonder, because we get too used to each other. And when I come out to California, like that meeting that Dave put on, you walk into a room like, we don't have hundreds of people like that. You have hundreds. We've got a few. My sponsor died 3 months ago. He was 91 years old. He was 57 years sober. He was a 12-step champion. I had him for 43 years. And they give prizes for firemen and policemen that save 3, 4, 5, 6 lives. That man, that very ordinary mailman, saved a couple of hundred lives at minimum, not counting what the rest of us have done on the heels of his experience. You wouldn't have hired him to come out and teach you the big book. But he was my big book. His wife was Linda's sponsor, and those people are not ordinary people. The last time Clancy was in, he gave him a lot of juice, which was very nice. He talked about that. That was good. I started drinking when I was 13 years old, freshman in high school, 4'11", 95 pounds, mostly mouth. I went to a military high school on a college campus, Catholic military high school, pretty strict military school. We drank in high school like most people drink in college. I am missing my 50th high school reunion to be here this weekend. I did not know that was scheduled, but I wanted to be here. Of my 5 closest buddies in high school, 4 are in Alcoholics Anonymous, 1 is an Al-Anon. I mean, that would be my college roommate that's an Al-Anon. We drank in high school. I mean, we really did. We just drank our brains out. I was, when you're small, I was young. I'm one of 7 kids. Mom sent the older ones to school early, so I was one of the youngest guys in the class. You feel like you're always catching up, like everybody knows something you don't know. When I took my first drink, I mean, it was like a sex change operation. It was not an improvement. I mean, it was a major change. I mean, I felt part of. I was able to go to parties with upperclassmen, which was kind of a dangerous thing. You'd be shining shoes for a month if you showed up at the wrong party when I went to high school. It just altered. I didn't feel like it was part of. I felt like all of a sudden I was making things happen. And I drank as often. You know, our heroes were those Second World War people who drank hard, played hard, made contributions in the community, and had these clans. You know, if you were Catholic in our area, if you had less than 7 children, you had a reproductive problem. I mean, there was families were friends of families. I mean, it really was, you know, kind of an extraordinary thing. And I had a reputation, got in trouble, car accidents. I was the guy that made the false IDs. I thought my drinking problem was I was underage. The police didn't like it. My father did not like it. Had a chance to go away to school, thought my drinking would get normal. It did not. I drank my way out of the University of Notre Dame in the middle of my senior year. Well, that's our story. I mean, we can get in, we just don't stay. That is our story. I mean, that's the cost. You don't get to have a life. You know, Rudy, he went to Notre Dame. I passed through. I did not have the experience of that. I had 3 guys petition to have me removed from engineering school. I was the class drunk. I mean, they used my room as a study hall. I started out as an A student. I ended up as a C student. I was diagnosed an alcoholic when I was 19. I lost my commission in the Army. I had to get a medical release to get out of the Army. I go home, and that was for alcoholism. I thought that was nuts. I didn't know what the hell. I came home. I finished school at a local university. My father asked me to leave the house. He said, "We love you, but you're a pain in the ass. This is not working. Good luck." I got a job at a liquor store. It's important to use your gifts. And this is the last year of my drinking. I drank, close to a fifth a day, most days for the last year of my drinking. So I work at the liquor store. I get in trouble. You're talking about moments of clarity. I'm making a delivery in the morning. I'm drinking. I knock over a little girl on a bicycle. She's under the car. I get out. She is not hurt. I pick her up. I run down the alley. She's pointing at her house. She's screaming. The house she's pointing at was the house I was born in. And you're holding this little girl, looking at the house, thinking, how'd you get here, bozo? How'd you get here? Is this what you started out, to be? The neighbors came out. They were ready, going to call the cops, and they found out I was a Bazans, which is not a big deal. It was like our parish. We were a family in the parish, and they let me out of it. I lost that job, took a job as a waiter, worked as a waiter for the last 6 months of my drinking. I'm living sort of on Skid Row. $10 a night room, shacked up with waiters. And Dr. Seuss, that child author? Those are actual photographs of people I live with during the last year of my drinking. I was just really a mess. I was a bozo. I'm working, I get up, I take a few drinks, I go to work. I work from 10 to 1. At 1 to 5, I go drink beer. At 5, I go buy a pint. No one knows where I am. That's just fine with me. I'm just waiting for the draft to figure out what the hell they're going to do with me. I go to a party, I get my face kicked in, I get fired. I've got no place to go. I go home, I asked my dad if I could move back in the house. He asked me not to drink. I said I wouldn't. I was unable. I started to go through withdrawal. I never knew you could get in trouble not drinking. And when I moved back in the house, I was as tired of being me as they were tired of having me be me. I had 6 brothers and sisters giving me the look, my parents giving me the look. I loved my family, and I was tired of being the jerk of the family. And when I moved in, I thought, I'm going to change my life. I got back together with Linda. We had gone together for, we don't know anymore, a year and a half, I think. We don't. We broke up for almost a year. I showed up at a party, pretty drunk. She's got a date, and I asked if I could get together with her the next day. And I got together with her the next day, and I asked her if she would get back together with me and consider seriously the prospect of getting married. Now, she's a psychiatric nurse working on an alcohol ward. So while she's attractive, she's not very bright. And we became engaged. We married not too long after that. I got a job as executive trainee, bought my first car, thought it's finally going to happen. All I wanted to do was become an adult. My parents' friends all looked like their lives worked. And I thought if you just got to be a certain age, I didn't understand that you actually had to perform. My mother always said, Bob, you're not very bright, dress well. And that has been one of the guiding principles. Form over function has been kind of one of the guiding principles of my life. I couldn't stop drinking. I got this job, now I'm the company drunk. I'm in a company of engineers. I mean, use up my sick leave in the first 3 months of work. I'm falling asleep at my desk. I'm a mess, really a mess. And I quit that job. I get a job as a salesman. I got that job for about a month or two. A buddy of mine gets married. Weddings were good for about a week. I wake up Thursday morning, July 1967. Haven't been to work in 3 days. I'm hugging the toilet, doing my morning exercises. And it is my moment. And all of a sudden, the recommendation of my psychiatrist and my father that I call Alcoholics Anonymous didn't seem impossible that morning, and I called AA. And two guys met me at a cafe about 2 miles from our home. And as soon as I called up, I found out I still had a job, still was engaged. And I thought, why the hell did you call Alcoholics Anonymous? I mean, that kind of an overreaction. And but I had this curiosity to go see what an alcoholic looked like. You know, I mean, that is the level of denial that we live with. I mean, and I went and met these two guys. One guy had 6 months, one guy had 6 years. They sat me down in the booth and said, we're from AA. We had a drinking problem, found an answer for it, want to share it with you. We hope it helps you. If it doesn't help you, don't worry about it. For some reason, it helps us talking to guys like you. And they told me their story. When you're young and in trouble, you get put in front of all sorts of helpers, doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, bishops, nuns, priests, psychologists, psychiatrists. My parents and family did it all. I'd never talked to another person with a drinking problem. In a matter of 45 minutes, those guys had me sharing stuff with them that I had not shared with anybody. And that night they took me to my first meeting. I mean, we have many traditions in Alcoholics Anonymous, the most wonderful one of which is that we share our experience, strength, and hope. Not our ideology, not our philosophy, not our thinking. There's a power when you share your life with someone else. Those men altered my life that night by simply telling me their story. I went to my first meeting of AA, scared stiff. You know, thought you were going to give me a test. I was tested a lot. I mean, I did. I literally thought, I didn't know what the admission process was to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went to my first meeting, I met my sponsor, Warren. And Warren, sometime in that, I drank twice after coming into Alcoholics Anonymous. Once after a month, I came to Los Angeles, 30 days sober on a business trip. They told me to call AA. I did not. I told everybody I had a $100 bet, wasn't drinking, stayed sober the first week, drank the second week, got in a bunch of trouble, went home, and then we were married. And I think in the back of my mind, I was going to drink on our honeymoon. And we honeymooned in Mexico. You know where the divers dive off those cliffs in Mexico? I dove off those cliffs on my last run. I was in the audience watching a world high diving contest. I thought, God, that's not so tough. And I'm very drunk. Drove off the public landing, climbed up, got up to about 190 feet, got stuck, split my swimsuit, cut my leg. Linda's going absolutely nuts. This horse's ass is up on this, trying to decide whether to jump or dive. And finally figured out, to hell with it, and I dove, and God watches after fools and drunks because I made it. If I would have jumped, I would have died. You have to get out almost 35 feet at the center of the channel. You can't jump that way. I didn't know that, or I didn't know it didactically. I may have known it intuitively. And we started vacationing there years later, and Linda gave me a picture of the chasm at La Quebrada one night we were watching the divers, and she gave me a picture and said, there, but for the grace of God. I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever done. And she said, it is not even in the top 10. And had my last drink on the airplane on the way home. My sponsor sat me in a chair, and he said, Bob, alcoholism is a disease. Did not know that. Don't know what I thought it was. Threefold: physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. It's good, says four, but emotional, physical, spiritual. He said, we do in Alcoholics Anonymous, once you take your last drink or drug, we use the program of the 12 steps to find a different way to live that's sufficiently better than the way we lived before. Without, using drugs or alcohol to do it. If you don't change, you're not going to stay. He said, have you ever quit drinking? I said, yep. He said, did it work? I said, nope. He said, it didn't work for me. There's a difference between sobriety and abstinence. We are not, you've got to put this program into your life, make the changes, or you're not going to stay. That was like the Gettysburg Address of Alcoholics Anonymous for me. And I came back and I threw myself in and I became the wingman of the most active member of Alcoholics Anonymous in our group. And for a couple of years I was the youngest guy who was staying sober in our group. I said, okay, I'll buy it. I got the problem, you got the answer. If I got the problem and you got the answer, I got a half a dozen other things that are going on in my life. Because I'd been sober a number of times. Just before I went back to my senior year, I was beaten up, robbed, rolled, pistol whipped, shot at, thrown out of the second story of a hotel, ended up in a psych ward in a hospital. And they were not going to let me go back to my senior year at school. I talked my way out of it. They let me go back on the condition that I didn't drink, and I didn't drink for about 3 months. My life did not get better. I didn't all of a sudden become what I thought you were telling me I'd become if I just wouldn't drink. The message I would get, what's wrong with you is swallowing bourbon. Stop swallowing bourbon, your life's going to be okay. Not. I don't know what was wrong with me, like a built-in failure mechanism. They did not understand what I was going through. And when I walked into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm 23 years old. There was a group of about 25 men and 2 women. The women were in their maybe 60s. They seemed older to me, but I was, at 23. Today, 60s and 70s does not seem old to me. They greeted me with a warmth and a welcomeness that I thought was extraordinary. I mean, these were people my parents' age. I was not used to being treated. All that joke about I spilt more than you, no one gave me a bad time. They were just trying to help me, and they were glad that I was there. But abstinence did not work for me. It was the most uncomfortable period of my time. So I came in there and I said, okay. I had about 5 or 6 issues that were going on. I had trouble getting up in the morning. Later I found out that had something to do with when I went to bed, but I did not know it at the time. I spent $300 or $400, this is 1967, $300 or $400 more a month than I made. If you do that over a long period of time, you end up in debt. I just want to report that to you in case you're running that one. We started to have kids pretty early on, and I wasn't going to make the few mistakes my wonderful parents made, and I didn't. I made all the mistakes they made and a bunch they didn't think of. I was loud, impatient, angry, immature, and sometimes violent with my children. Not proud of that, but accurate report. I had trouble getting to work. I had some difficulty staying at work, and I had problems working at work. Other than that, I was a pretty good worker. I interviewed well. I just didn't perform. And I had a gambling problem. It was more of a hobby. 4 or 5 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. It was not a big deal. I was making $5,000 a year playing backgammon, and it was kind of like a second job. I had every one of those issues when I took my first inventory, and none of them made my inventory. My first inventory was not very insightful. It was kind of a recitation of the worst things that I had done. And I still got the blessing and the work of whatever, the insufficiency that I took when I took that step. And I said, okay, if I'm an alcoholic and I've got the problem and you've got the answer, those problems ought to be taken care of, and hell, it might take a year. It might take 50 is what the hell I'm discovering that it might take now. When I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I had built a wall around me so that you couldn't see what I didn't want you to see in my life. The thinking that when I'm behind the wall said you like me, but you only like what I let you see about me. If you could see everything about me, you'd hate me. Hell, I hate me. Who knows more what a lousy, crummy, insufficient person I am than me. I'm walking around comparing my inside with your outsides. At some point in time, I got sick enough, tired enough, afraid enough that I started to tear that wall down. I started to tear it down when I called AA. I continued to tear it down in conversation with my sponsor, and I tore it all the way down to my 5th step, and I made a discovery. And the discovery was that I'm not unique. My personality may be unique, but not my illness, not my behavior, not my experience, not my feelings. And I started to have a sense of hope that what worked for you would work for me. Most of us come in here with such a profound sense of uniqueness and differentness. If that doesn't get reduced, you look for the differences and you don't stay. When that wall came down, my ego was crushed enough that I started to identify, and I was on a honeymoon for about 9 months. I asked a question, someone gave me an answer, I had an answer. After about a year, I'd ask you a question, you'd give me an answer, I wasn't sure you were right. But for almost a year, okay, I didn't have a real good sense of my defects of character, but I had surrendered and I had gone through a significant alteration. I was not the same guy. Then I started to have problems in sobriety, which I didn't think a guy should have. And I started to build the damn wall back up. Thank you very much for healing my drinking problem. Stay out of my sex life. Thank you very much for healing my drinking problem. Stay out of my gambling. Stay out of my finances. Stay out of my marriage. Stay out of my parenting. Brick by brick, sober, going to 6 meetings a week, I built the damn wall back up. Until I'm 6 or 7 years sober, and as much debt as I was when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, my marriage is in trouble. My work life, is non-existent. I'm just this bozo on the bus. The only place in my life that works is Alcoholics Anonymous. Why do you think I spent almost all my time in Alcoholics Anonymous? And it's the story of my life. I'm behind this wall, and everybody's telling me what a great job I'm doing. I'm doing 12-step work. I'm giving talks. I'm going to prisons. I'm saying, can't you see? I am dying behind this wall. We started to get in Minnesota, had that treatment phenomenon, and we're getting lots of young people, and I'm getting all the referrals, and I'm working with all these people, and not too many of them are staying sober. The gift I had in AA is I was allowed to love Alcoholics Anonymous from the moment I walked in the front door. So it's been easy for me to stay. Hard for me to do the work, but easy for me to stay. And but my problems started to eat my lunch. They started to disturb me. By the time I'm 5 years sober, they're really bothering me. 6 years sober, they're eating my lunch. 7 years sober, I'm thinking about shooting myself. I'm not going to drink, but I'm thinking about killing myself again. This is the story of my life. You're a good starter, you don't finish anything. You are right where you always are, Tiger. And, if I had to go to a program for every problem I had, I was going to be a busy little guy. It's just amazing. And you think you're a jerk. It's working. The new guys coming in the club, you get him a cup of coffee, sit him down, you talk to him about the bushel basket full of manure he brought in. And he tells you about it, and you say, hey, as bad as it is and as hopeless as it seems, you're in the right spot. You come in here, get in the book, get a sponsor. Do not have to do it perfectly. Just get in the game. You're going to be okay. See that guy over there? 2 years ago, he was a mess. Today, his life is cool. He's knocking it out of the park. You're in the right place. You're going to be okay. I get in the car at 11 o'clock. I'm going home. I'm saying, Bob, when are you going to be okay? You're 6 years sober. You just bought a $400 sport coat at a store you had a $500 bill at. When are you going to learn how to work? Everybody knows how to work, and you bozo, you do not know how to work. When are you going to quit gambling? When are you going to be more gentle and kind with your children and be a better husband? I'm busting my ass to try all those things, and it's not working. Two things that have saved my bacon in AA, I can't keep my mouth shut. I'm telling my sponsor 60% of what's going on. And I know in LA you do 100. I think that's absolutely terrific. But I'm only telling myself 60% of what's going on. Life is lived forward, but it's understood backwards. You don't see it when you're in it. You see it after you're in it. But I'm in communication. The other thing is I love the old timers, and I had good examples. And I knew that my answer is I had to find out what God had to do with Wednesday. But I was stuck. I figured you go knock on the door. God says, who's there? You said, God, it's Bob. God says, what do you want? I said, well, I'm 7 years sober. My pants are on fire. I need some help. Will you help? God says, sure. And then I asked God what everybody asks their sponsor when they come over with that bushel basket full of problems. What do I do? It doesn't have anything to do with doing. It has to do with being. But we always want to know, what do I do? Now, you have to be a rocket scientist to figure out what God would tell a guy with my set of defects of character what to do. Get up in the morning. Go to work. Stay at work. Work at work. Get on a budget, which I think is an Al-Anon term. It's a harsh word. It is... it's not in the book. Stop gambling. Be kind and gentle with your wife and more loving with your children. I'm going to say, hell, if I could do all those things, I wouldn't need God. What the hell you think I've been trying to do for the last 7 years? As soon as I clean my act up, I'm going to go to God. But what the hell is the use of developing a relationship with a higher power if you can't fulfill the conditions of the relationship? I was stuck in that place for 2 years. And finally, out of desperation of just being tired of being a jerk and worried about, I don't know, getting drunk or hurting myself, I went back through the steps for the third time formally. Step 1, no-brainer. Powerless and unmanageable? Of course. You know what I lost? Step 2. I believed it for us, but not for me. I could put my hand on a lie detector, and a new guy said, do you think Alcoholics Anonymous is going to restore me to sanity? Yes. Needle doesn't move. Do you think it's going to restore Bob to sanity? Answer, if I say yes, the needle moves, because I'm 7 years sober. I'm on the damn down escalator walking up. It is not working for me, and I'm in trouble. When you're in trouble, I think you get more active. I started to see people with bigger problems than I had, with smiles on their faces, walking through the walls that I was trying to avoid, with dignity and grace. And I came to believe that God was going to restore me to sanity. I took step 3 on my knees with my sponsor in his office. We didn't do that much in those days, but I started to hear some of the California people talk about it, and I thought, what the hell, I'm going to try that? A little weird, but it worked. And I did my 3rd, 4th step, and then I did, when I went to take my 5th step with my sponsor, the first 2 we took with clergy, which is what most of us did in those days. And I said to him, look, when I'm done, be careful. Whatever you recommend I'm going to do. I said, I feel like I'm dying of thirst lying next to a lake. I know what to do. I could tell anybody what to do in my circumstances. I just can't or won't do it. I am so bloody tired of not or won't or can't do it that it would be hard for me to explain in the proper language how upset I was with myself. I did my 5th step, and when I was done, he said to me, you know, you got a lot of problems around money, failure, success, and work. My dad was a pretty successful guy, and I was never going to be as good as my old man, that kind of stuff. He said, I want you to find someone, a psychologist that works with business people. I said, oh, crap. I said, well, it made me, it was kind of like my program wasn't working. Hello. And it made me look different. I did not want to do something that made me stand out or made me look like, you know, I couldn't use my program to go do it. But so I get this referral, get a psychologist, call him up, and he said, will you get your parents involved? I said, no. I said, I'm 33 years old. My parents have been over-involved in my life. If you can't help me without getting my parents involved, please refer me to someone who can.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
He said, well, you get your wife involved. I thought, oh, crap. Well, the conversations are always different when your wife's in the room. There's a different information bank. I said, yeah. Will you get the kids involved? I said, they're young. What the hell will you get the kids involved? I said, yeah. I was embarrassed about it. So we're going to the psychologist. I don't know. We went a couple of times a week for, I don't know how many months, 6 months, something like that. And I'm in this meeting, and my business is going broke. And I don't know, I'm busting my ass 2-3 hours a day. And I know that none of you have had this problem, so it's a Minnesota thing, I think. So I'm in the real estate investment business, and maybe going to have to file bankruptcy. And the psychologist looked at me and he said, "Why are you so afraid of failing?" And I wanted to hit him. I mean, my reaction was I literally wanted to jack him. And I said, "Look, I've lived in this town all my life. I'm in the investment business. I'm about to go broke. They're going to put my name in the paper. I'm going to lose it all. You're a doctor." I said, "You go broke, you file bankruptcy, just 6 months later, you take your little sign, walk down the hall, pound it on a door, and you're making $100,000. I said, "I'm about to lose everything I had." I said, "Nod your head up and down if you understand that." And he looked at Linda, and he said, "If Bob lost everything he had, would he lose you?" And Linda said, "Nope, wouldn't lose me." And then he asked Billy and Peter, "If your dad lost everything he had, would he lose you?" And the kids, of course, said no. If you can't lose, you can't play. I mean, I'm the salesman that doesn't even take a chance. I don't make the sales call. I just phony up activity reports. I don't take the chance you're going to drag me across the desk and force me to sell something to you. I mean, and what I discovered in that man's office was fear. Chuck used to talk about the fish in the ocean. You know, the one fish looked over at the other fish and said, "Isn't the ocean wonderful?" And the other fish looked over and said, "What's the ocean?" No, I'm swimming in fear, and I don't know what it is. I've done 3 inventories. Fear has to do with dogs, snakes, and tall buildings. What I discovered is I'm afraid of being a husband. I'm afraid of being a father. I'm afraid of work. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of success. I am swimming. So about a month later, I'm in my living room, one of the worst days I've had in AA, went to work late, left early, got in a backgammon game, won $600, missed dinner, got in a fight with my wife and slapped one of the kids, missed the AA meeting. One of those days you'd like to have videotaped and sent to the general service office to show what 7 years of sobriety can do. Now at this time, both Linda and I are falling apart. We have, we've reached the end of our rope. It is not working. And I'm in my living room and I said, "Gee, it happened again." And I said, "What do you mean it happened again, bozo? Weren't you there?" And I said, "Yeah, I was there, but it's almost like I'm in a blackout. I don't have to think about these things. I just do them and all of a sudden I realized I was a bunch of crap. My life was the way it was because it designed it that way. I sounded like a guy who wanted to quit gambling. I wanted to gamble whenever the hell I wanted to gamble for as much money as I wanted to gamble without having problems with gambling. I wanted money without work. I wanted my wife and children's love and affection without paying attention to them. Not a very good design. And all of a sudden I realized that I had tried as hard as I knew how to try. Now, I'm going to 6 meetings a week. I'm sponsoring guys. I'm busting my ass. I got all the merit badges, and my life is going downhill like it's on a grease slide. And I realized that I had tried the best I knew how to do, and I had failed, and for whatever reason at that moment, that was okay. I got down on my knees. I took the 6th and the 7th step of the program of AA at a depth that I hadn't taken them. 6th step said, "You're entirely ready to have God remove the defects of character." 7th step said, "You humbly ask Him." I had spent 7 years trying to get rid of them. I don't have the power. I have the responsibility, but I'm the pipe, not the well. It happens through me, not by me. A doctor doesn't heal. He creates an aseptic environment, creates an atmosphere in which healing can take place, and God heals. I don't change. I create an atmosphere in which change can take place, and God changes us. That, I think, is the attitude in the 6th and the 7th step, and the 3 requirements of being honest, open-minded, and being willing, and doing the step work. That night, when I got down on my knees, took those steps, 4 of the major problems in my life left that night, such as the power of the program. I'm a guy who, when I go on a diet, I usually make a lot of promises I don't keep. When I go on a diet, I usually go buy a pint of ice cream and a bag of cookies. Well, I'm probably never going to have ice cream again. It's already been a bad day. I'm just going to have the last little bit of ice cream I may ever have. And I knew that I needed some structure. I turned the checkbook over to my wife, who is good with finance, number one, and number two, did not have the ego problems with money that I had. I made appointments with my sponsor about when I'd go to work and how long I'd stay at work. I quit gambling that night. I started dating my wife. I dated my wife every Friday night for 35 years. It was a real, live, dangerous date. No one else went out on it. We went out to a couple of drinks. It was, she got dressed up. I got dressed up. It was one of the best things that we ever did. And my life changed like it was on a rocket ship. All of a sudden, the guy that didn't know how to work knew how to work. I got a partner who's almost 50 years sober. He's 48 years sober, I guess. We've been partners for 42 years. And we got lucky in the right business at the right time, and our business took off. And for the next 10 years, we made enough money to burn a wet elephant. And it was a magical time. That was my deeply shallow period. I'm the guy in the Mercedes with the overdressed suit and the fancy tie, showing up at the meeting thinking God has blessed me because I'm such a wonderful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. How would you like me in your group? There's problems with failure. Well, there's problems with success. There's an arrogance that I developed that I was unaware that I had. It's just life. It's just life. 1985, they passed the Tax Act, and between 1989 and 1995, I lost everything I had. Went to a man, I asked him to be my spiritual director. He said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want to be less materialistic and more loving." Within 6 months, I started to lose everything I had. He's now dying of cancer also. So I went to him, I said, "We got to talk." I said, "I want to keep the stuff and be less materialistic." We laugh about that. I lost $10 million in 3 years. I lost it all. At that time, our middle boy came home from Christmas, got arrested for drunken driving, totaled on an automobile, ended up in treatment, and then he went to the sober house. And they have a meeting every Friday night. I'd go to the meeting with Linda on Friday night. When they opened the meeting, I started crying. I cried all the way through the meeting. See that guy over there? He's got 25 years. How'd you like to have what he has? I think he's got the clap. I don't know what the hell he's got. Losing my money was not like changing my clothes. It was like tearing the skin. If any of you are out there praying to be a millionaire, include the idea of keeping it. It never occurs to anybody if they ever got it, they would lose it. Just for the hell of it, as long as you're hoping for that. And once again, I got more active. I had to find out who I was with money and who I was without money. I got back, I got active, my business came back, I made it all back. In the last couple of years, I got back in the trouble that I was in 15 years ago. Old and dumb is a really bad combination. Because you could change one or two of those variables. And in the last 3 years, I have lost 50 or 60% of whatever I built up. I lost half of it because of the market. And I lost half of it out of stupidity, inattention, and poor decisions and ego. And that's not a fun inventory at 67 or 8 years of age to take a look at putting your family's security at risk. Doing it again. Notice the word again. I promised myself if I ever got out of that last batch in 1990, that would never happen to me. I was okay for 10 years. And then the magic started to happen. And I got an erection, and I got back in the game. Trees were going to grow to the sky. Buildings were always going to be worth more than they were before. And I got caught up in the ego of that process. And I recreated the circumstances. And that's what we do. We walk in here with a toolbox that we have constructed since we've been kids. Most of us have a toolbox entirely full of hammers. No screwdrivers, no wrenches, no drills. Just all. If your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Now we are We are very creative. We learn to take the small ones and we learn how to use the prong to screw things in, and we use two of them together for wrenches, but it's just hopeless. If I had the power in this room tonight to say, okay, every problem you have in this room, I'm going to solve. They're going to be gone. On the condition that 10 years from now, everybody comes back and sits in this chair. 10 years from now, most of us would have recreated the problems that we had in the room today. There's more teaching about the steps in the program today than there ever has been. I mean, there's more tapes on the 12 steps. We study the book. We hit each other over the head with the book like it's... I mean, the old-timers, I don't think would have stood for some of the ways we use the big book today. I mean, it is just, I love what Sandy said the other day. Can't you just see Bob and Bill having a problem? Well, let's look it up in the book. I don't think that was... And I love the book. I think it's God-inspired. I think it is our instruction. But the book is the menu. You can starve to death eating the menu. We know people who have memorized the first 164 pages, many of whom I would not go on a fishing trip with. It is meant to be put into your life. And as a result of that, it's a change of heart. It is not informational. It is not a head game. It is not didactic. It is spiritual. Because it's a spiritual process, you can't even explain it. I mean, people don't know. People say, why would you ever go to 6 meetings a week? I mean, you can't explain that to a normie. You just can't. Do you need 6 meetings a week? I mean, you're sober 20-some years. What the hell? Why? I mean, it doesn't make sense. No, it's not logical. But it makes sense to us. It is our grounding. It is our life. It is where we go to maintain our spiritual condition. The book talks about having a spiritual awakening. Why are we able to live sanely, like Paul talked about last night, when we never have been able to? We're not under-equipped. I mean, good hearts, but bad heads. I mean, there's something drastically wrong when we came in here. Most of us had no understanding of the depth of the disease of alcoholism. We had no understanding as to how bad our thinking was. We had no understanding that if we didn't make a significant change, we were going to continue to create the problems in our lives that we brought to the front door of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that doesn't change by abstinence. What happens when you start bringing your damp log to the bonfire of AA? And that's what it is. There's a collective consciousness. There's a feeling in the room last night. There is, when you walk into a room, when you walk into a meeting, it's like you kind of check your brain at the door. And you plug into a collective mind. And in that space for that hour, it's different. There's a peace and a stability and a quietness for many of us in those rooms, in those hours, in those meetings, that we don't have anyplace else. And teaspoon by teaspoon, we start to carry it out into the other areas of our lives. And it's cumulative. But it is not just informational. What happens to most of us when we surrendered is a new conversation was born in our heads. The thing that is in most of our way is our thinking and this unbelievably dense conversation that we have about ourselves that we think is us. And it isn't us, it's just our thinking. But for some reason, those old-timers, those people that Paul talked about and those people that are scattered throughout this room, started to interfere with that conversation. They stopped it. And they planted a new conversation. And all of a sudden, when you make a change, when you have a spiritual awakening, everything's different. Not just some things, who you are willing to spend time with, what you're interested in, what you're willing to do. It changes. It's a change in consciousness. You start to wake up. And that's the conversation we nurse in Alcoholics Anonymous. That is the change in consciousness. That is what, and if that doesn't continue at some level, most of us are not going to make it. What happened to me at 7 years, I thought was because I was a lame member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't think it's so. I was, but I don't think it was just due to that. You can't get it all done in the first 2 years. We make more profound changes in the first couple of years than any group of people on the face of the earth. It is just unbelievable. My favorite joke. I mean, that's why we like the new person. I mean, we watch the story. It's just, when I first heard John's story, it was just, John's story was so harsh in the circumstances of it that I couldn't bring my chicken crap little problems and worry about them in the hearing of that story. Okay? I can now, because I'm only focused on my chicken shit little problem. The joke I was going to tell. Minister sitting on a bench, kid on top of the hill on a bike. Minister's waiting for the bus. Kid comes down the hill. The bike goes out of control. He goes head over tea kettle, splits his pants, cuts his leg. The wheel bends. The little kid stands up and says, "Son of a bitch." And the manager comes over and says, "Son, you should not talk like that." He said, "The next time this happens to you, I want you to stand up and say, 'Jesus, help me.'" 6 months later, same kid, same minister, same bench. Kid's on top of the hill. He comes down. Bike gets out of control. Falls over, splits his pants, cuts his leg, bends the wheel on the bike. Kid gets up and says, "Jesus, help me." The leg heals. The pants come back together. The wheel straightens out, and the minister looks over and says, "Son of a bitch." And that is why the new person is the most important person in the room. That is why we loved Paul's story last night, is because it is the story of Christmas. It is, I think what happened to me at 7 years happens to most of us sometime between 5 and 12 years of sobriety. You run out of the changes the program that you have for the first 2 years. You start to level out, you get on a platform, and there's something more you have to do. It has to deepen at some level, and you start to get into the second level of crap that you didn't even notice because you were in such a survival mode as the boat was, leaking and filling full of water. And all of a sudden you start, and those are the issues that allow you to have the full measure of life, that allow you to stay married or get a job, have a career rather than a job. They are the things. So imagine that I'm working with a guy who's 35 years old, married with kids, and he's having trouble with the 4-step. All the columns, he's a little confused. I'm saying, look, I know it's difficult, a little awkward. Why don't you put the book away? I want you to get your ex-wife and your wife and your kids, mom and dad, brother and sister, your ex-boss, a couple of people from the group, bring them over to the house. And here's what I want you to say to them. Just say, we have a step in Alcoholics Anonymous where we're trying to get in touch with our defects of character, and I'm having trouble identifying mine. And then pass out tablets and paper and then leave. You'd have a pretty good start, Tiger. But most of us wouldn't call that meeting. You know why? We don't want to change. We are so identified with our problems in our lives are not new. They're old. They're not weeks old. They're not months old. They're not years old. They're decades old. We think they are who we are. They're not who we are. They're simply what we do. They're just behavior. When I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous and I had those problems of living that I had, those defects of character, I tried and failed, but I still grew. There comes a time where you either change or you stop growing. Gamblers hang out with the gamblers, chasers hang out with the chasers, you make a deal. We'll go to meetings together, we'll talk about the traditions. I won't call you on your crap, you don't call me on mine. Deal? Not a good deal. Not a good deal. But at some point in time, you reach the fork in the road. And you either build an addition onto your house to accommodate the problem, or you start to deepen what you're doing. And it isn't a matter of perfection. It isn't a matter of getting ready. We're human beings. There isn't anybody who's going to get all the way there. There isn't anybody who's got it all together. People sound like they really are expert on. We're talking about living life. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about being parents. We're talking about being spouses. We're talking about work. I mean, if you're married with kids and still working, give me a break. I mean, do you think anybody's an expert on all of that? Do you think you're going to avoid the texture of life in the process of it? Not. It is that we have a program, spiritual in its nature, that if we use those principles and put them in action in our lives, there's nothing missing. The process of finding God is a process of removal, not addition. We have dragged our perfect magnet through the junkyard of life and shown up in Alcoholics Anonymous with a 6-foot ball of crap. And through meetings and through steps and through talking with your sponsor, piece by piece, you start to pry the crap off the ball. And then a little bit later, you start to see there's a shape in there. And someone tells you it's a lamp. And it's kind of attractive. You go get it steam cleaned. Piece by piece, you take the crap out, and all of a sudden you find out there's a lamp in there. 3 years later, you get a cord. Sometime after that, you get a bulb. Subsequently, you plug it in the wall. Later, you turn it on. Some years after that, you find out it's a 3-way bulb. And it was there all the time. People say you're different. Not different. I'm who I have always been. You have brought me back to who I have always been. That is the process of recovery. That's why it is so when you listen to us when we're sharing, it's like it's the process of coming home. It's not the process of becoming someone else or going someplace you have never been. It's the process of becoming who you have always been. Most of us never get the gift out of the box. It's still under the piano, wrapped up with the ribbon still on it. We never get a chance to find out what our instrument is that we are supposed to be playing in the business of life. I've lived most of my life in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know why I was so lucky to be able to get here young and stay here. I don't know why I was so lucky to have Warren McGinley as my sponsor and now Dick Martin. I don't know why I was so attracted. But the guy that I got hooked up with and became his wingman, I got to do it all. And so my activity in Alcoholics Anonymous is simply by following that mailman around, doing what he did. And as a result of that, a guy who is about as self-centered as you could possibly be, who is still significantly flawed. I've been married 44 years. We had 3 sons who are in the recovery program. If AA hadn't helped me stop being violent with my children, wouldn't it have been wonderful to have my kids have the problem of alcoholism, and when they needed help, they didn't want it because of the bozo they had as a dad? Guy gives a hell of an AA talk. But how would you like to have Mr. AA be such a way as a father that his kids didn't want recovery? That could have been the story. And the reason it wasn't the story is I just kept coming. I kept a sponsor. I kept trying the steps imperfectly. But I'm in the game. Okay? So when this last thing where I'm going broke, I'm depressed. What does a guy with 43 years of sobriety do when he's made some really seriously bad decisions and is in serious financial trouble? First of all, he thinks too much. I'm back. The worst part of the whole thing is the self-centeredness. You're thinking about yourself. You got this suction cup that every time your mind slows down, you go back to this conversation. It's like a marble in a bowl. It just always ends up in the bottom of the bowl. That's the worst part of it. So what do? I go to Mass twice a week. I go to 6 meetings a week. I sponsor quite a few people. And now I've got a new sponsor, which has really been a nice thing for me. My sponsor and I were more like father and son for the last number of years. I do what you tell a new guy to do. And what works for me is I'm different when I'm with you. I'm the best me I've ever been when I'm with you. I know more about who I am in this room than in any other room I'm in. More about myself in this room than I do as a husband, as much as I love my wife. More about me in this room than I do as a father, as much as I love my children. My business life, even with my obscene love of money, my business life is less important than my AA life and has always been less important than that is what saved my bacon over a period of time. I'm in this room doing what I'm doing this weekend rather than being at my 50th reunion because this is the best way I know to maintain my spiritual condition. That's all I have to do. If I maintain my spiritual condition, I'm going to be okay. And the way I do that is I spend time with you. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control is connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.